Hello everybody and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program 2, where we are currently sending out our second ComSat here, which is currently in a polar orbit, and honestly I feel like that was maybe a little bit of a waste of DV, but whatever. We're going to warp forward here and get this set up correctly. There we go. We're headed, of course, out to the moon, and we need to get into position for this burn, which we set up last episode. It'll be roughly a 30-second burn, so that is fine. We'll warp forward a little further. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, mark. Okay, so off we go to the moon. We're going to be putting this in a polar orbit, and we're going to have to do some inclination changes once we get there to get it into approximately the orbit that I want it to be in, which is a polar orbit pretty much, I guess the term I'm looking for here is perpendicular to our equatorial orbit. I don't know how much sense that really makes in 3D space. So we're going to be targeting something along the lines of that. Okay, let's see how we're doing here. Yeah, this will do absolutely fine. So we want to warp out to our moon periapsis, and that is 3 days, and this is 3 hours. So this is the one that we want to warp to. Noted. So that's in about 4 hours. We'll time warp to point. And off we go towards the moon. Hello, moon. We're much closer now. Fantastic. So are we in the moon's sphere of influence yet? The answer is no. Wait. No, I think we are. Right? Yeah, we are in the moon's sphere of influence. So that's fine. We need to do a retrograde burn here. Oh, that's a big retrograde burn. Okay, 500 meters per second. That's fine. We can definitely do that. I want to have this be fairly minimal, or at least circularized, but I'm going to make it be a little bit more minimal here. There we go. I want to be able to grab our retrograde node. Turns out that helps. Right about there. Okay, we'll align to that maneuver node. That'll be in about 18 minutes, which is absolutely fine here. So the moon is down here right now, and that's fairly normal with the camera orientation in this game. But we can definitely see we're going to need to change our orbit a fair amount. So we're going to want it to be perpendicular to this orbit. So that basically means from this angle right here, we want it to be going basically like that. So that's going to require some change, right? No doubt about that. But let's enter orbit first. So we're about 40 seconds away from that burn. We can warp forward a little bit further. 20, 10, and 3, 2, 1, mark. Excellent. So we're just bringing ourselves into orbit here. We just want that very, very minimal orbit, ideally. Okay, just doing it very gently here. Right about there. Perfect. So next what I'm going to do is I'm going to do our inclination change. So let's line up our camera, which will need to be lined up about like so. Then we would grab this point, and we would just move it like this. Now that's giving us an escape velocity, which isn't surprising. And we would need to change it around about like so. Giving that a little bit of retrograde. This is slightly skewed this direction, so we can do the same here. About like this. This is about the orbit that I want to go for. Okay, so that looks good. A nice inclination change there. We'll align for that. And then we are, of course, going to need to change our periapsis a little bit, I think. 2156 and 2228. So yeah, it's going to be a very, very small periapsis change. That's fine. We can definitely do that. So now that we're aligned here, it's going to be about 2 days until we are in position for this burn. Let's warp forward there. Things are definitely weird feeling in polar orbits in this game compared to KSP1, where the polar orbit feels very similar to the equatorial orbit. But the camera motion is just very different in KSP2. No doubt about that. We're going to warp forward a little bit further here and bringing this down to about 10 seconds away from the burn. 3, 2, 1, mark. Okay. Shutting down the burn and just seeing where we're at here. Ooh, that's ever so slightly overshot. Okay, we're going to have to bring this around to, like, anti-node. I guess we may as well just call it retrograde. Retrograde is probably reasonably fine to bring this down. But this is definitely an escape velocity. So we don't want to be at an escape velocity, so let's give it just a teeny tiny amount of retrograde here. Okay, that'll do. That's good enough. So now at the apoapsis, I want to create a maneuver node, and we're going to want to very gently push this out. That is almost at escape velocity as well. So we're just going to want to very cautiously put it about here. So something like that. This will now become the apoapsis, and this will be the periapsis, but that's close enough. So that looks fine. Let's align to that node. And hope that I don't overshoot it this time. This is 1 delta V required. I'm going to take this down to 1% thrust limiter. Okay. So this is going to be in about 3 days. We will, of course, need to warp around a bit. So let's go on that. Polar orbits feel so weird in this game. No doubt about that. Okay. So we're about 2 minutes away. We can warp a little closer. It's about 30 seconds. Looks good. 20, 10, 2, 1, mark. Oh, right. Hang on a moment. Overshot this ever so slightly. Are we at an escape velocity? We are not. We're going to call this good. Okay, so this is a roughly perpendicular orbit. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're going to call that good for now. Now we need to do basically the same thing over at Minmus. So that's indeed exactly what we're going to do. We're going to head into the VAB, and we're going to launch this same vehicle again, and we need to put this in a polar orbit of Minmus. We didn't already do this, did we? No, we need to put this in a polar orbit of, yeah, Minmus. Hang on. We need to check. I actually don't remember where we're at here. We're going to have to head back to the KSC and then the tracking station. Okay. Status of Moon. We have 2 comsats. This is the way we want this to be. Minmus, we have 1 comsat, and this guy is in a roughly equatorial orbit. It's pretty close, actually, to being equatorial, but it's not maybe as maxed as it should be. Let's control this real quick here, and we apparently have no vessel control right now. Oh, it just needed to load in. Okay. There we go. So that's fine. We can raise our apoapsis and periapsis a fair amount here. So we're going to do exactly that. We're going to bump this guy up to be about... Yeah, that's escape there. About here. Okay, are we on minimum thrust? We absolutely should be. Okay, so let's warp around and get that done. Oh, we're going this way. Okay, sure. That's fine. I would have gone to periapsis first, but this is okay. 24 minutes? No, let's not be 24 minutes away, thanks. And 40 seconds. 30, 20, 10, and 3, 2, 1, mark. This is not pointing the right way. Hang on. Why is our SAS not on? Okay, there we go. Let's move our SAS over here. That is, of course, my own fault, but we're close enough to do this. This isn't actually a problem. Okay, let's just bring this right on over. And we'll call that good. Okay. So that is very, very close to the edge of the sphere of influence. We can then bring this guy on over and do the same sort of thing. That's escape velocity, but we can do that. We'll align this time. That does tend to help. And that'll be in another 10 days. Minmus is, of course, there with Kerbal way back there. So this will be fine. These communication satellites will make it much more likely that we don't lose communications as we're doing our more important things. So that's great. We're 24 minutes away again. Let's continue to head forward here. Now we're about 40 seconds away. 30, 20, 10, and 3, 2, 1, mark. Okay, I don't want to overshoot this. This is good enough, to be honest. But we'll just circularize-ish, about like that. That'll do. So that puts us in a wide orbit of Minmus. Okay, now we can head back to the VAB. And at the VAB, we're going to launch our polar orbit craft from Minmus. I'm going to do this equatorially. I feel like it was kind of a waste to launch the other one polar orbit. Although, do we have that satellite infrastructure around Kerbal? Do we need it? Probably not. I don't think we need it around Kerbal. Let's load this guy on in. That'll be fine. And we're just going to immediately launch this. It's going out to Minmus. So let's go. Off we go. Fantastic. So we're going to do an equatorial orbit here, and we'll just do an inclination change once we get to Minmus. It'll be fine. Or maybe do the inclination change during the transfer to Minmus. That is also a theoretical option. Yeah, we'll see how that goes. So for now, of course, it is quite dark. That's for sure. It's a little bit hard to see what's going on, but we're going up, and that is what's important at this time. I suppose the exhaust plume is easy enough to see. That's for sure. So we're just chilling here at about 7,000 kilometer apoapsis? Boy, that would be a spicy apoapsis at this point. No, this is a 12 kilometer apoapsis at this point, and that's looking good. Going equatorial, we do need about 1,000 less delta V to make it into orbit or so, because we get free delta V from the rotation of Kerbal. So that's absolutely fine. So we're at 30 kilometer apoapsis right now. I'm going to start heading over here. We're flying pretty much entirely by instruments right now because everything is super dark. So that is definitely a thing. I should remember to add lights to these designs, to be honest. Okay, we're at about a 60 kilometer apoapsis, so we can just be angling right at the horizon here, and that's absolutely fine. So we'll just position it about like that, working on getting a bunch of horizontal speed. Cool. We need a bunch more horizontal speed than we have, of course, right now, but that is a 70 kilometer apoapsis, and we're going to be swapping over to our other engine very shortly here. 75? Okay, let's continue to burn here a little bit and bring it up to about 80, maybe even 100. This isn't ideal to be burning this engine in atmosphere, but it'll do for now. Yeah, this'll be fine. 86, 87, 88, 89, and 90. We're pretty close to orbital velocity as it is right now, so that's looking good. That's 100 kilometers. I'm going to ditch our fairing now, if I can grab it. Payload, there we go. Fairing is out of here. Perfect. So at the apoapsis, we are, of course, going to circularize this orbit. Getting ourselves properly into an orbit usually helps. Something about like that'll do. This is probably not perfect. It's good enough. So we'll align for that burn. We are out of the atmosphere now, and this is going to be 439 meters per second. Looks good. Cool, so about 2 minutes until this burn. Let's just warp on forward and hopefully get ourselves some light. That would be nice. 20 seconds. Okay, we can continue to warp. 10, and 3, 2, 1, mark. Cool. 439 meters per second in total to get us into orbit from this point. Not too bad. So, keeping an eye on our orbit and getting mildly annoyed by the gimbal locking. It's all fine. Okay, just a little bit further here. There, that'll do. That is definitely good enough, and now, of course, we need to head out to Minmus. So we'll set Minmus as our target. We're going to have to do an inclination change because I didn't launch into the Minmus inclination, which is -6, and so right about here, we can start going Other direction. This way. 2 degrees, 1 degree, and 0.2, so probably a little off on the timing. Right about there. Okay, that looks good. So we'll align to that node, and that'll be in about 10 minutes. It's still very, very dark. We can kind of see what's going on here, but we're going to be entering the light side of Kerbal very, very shortly, and we'll be able to actually see things again. That does tend to help. Okay, so we're aligned nicely-ish, nicely enough, and let's warp on forward. There we go. Now we've got some light. That definitely helps. 30 seconds until this inclination change. 20, 10, and actually, Mark is now. We were a little late on that burn start, but it's okay. No major issues there. Okay, overshot it ever so slightly, 0.1 degrees. I'm not too concerned about it. We're gonna have to do an inclination change once we get to min-miss anyway, so that seems reasonably fine. Moon is in a potentially awkward position here and might interfere with our transfer. Let's see how this goes. No, looks good. Okay. Just pulling this back a little bit, we want this to be a fairly minimal min-miss encounter. And this inclination is reasonably fine. It will be a fairly significant inclination change. Let's think about moving it over top of min-miss. A bit more like this, and maybe tossing in... It doesn't really matter whether we're going under or above. So I'm just changing some of this around. We might be better off changing timing here. It's very sensitive. Okay. Yeah, it's very, very sensitive. Where was that encounter at? It should be out over here, actually. Yeah. There we go. So that timing is not necessarily ideal, but I want to get some minor tweaks done here. Yes, a little bit more prograde. That's better, for sure. It's certainly better, but it's not great, right? Let's see about bringing this in about like so. Slightly retrograde here. It's a little bit hard to tweak this in KSP2 in comparison. No doubt about that. A little bit harder. Maybe I'm just not used to it. That's probably the case, to be honest. So I want to see about... Yeah, this is still pretty equatorial. Let's just bring it out over this way. We'll call this good enough. This is good enough. I'm not going to mess with it too much. We've got so much delta V that it's absolutely okay. Let's just transfer out there. We'll make the changes once we get there. I'm really not too concerned about it. So let's just get ourselves into position for this burn. It'll be in about 12 minutes that we begin the burn. Okay, let's warp on forward. Excellent. We're going back into the dark side here, but that's okay. We're going to be leaving here fairly quickly. 20 seconds, 10, and 3, 2, 1, mark. And off we go to min-miss. It's not going to be the world's best encounter for us, but that's okay. We can make whatever changes we need to, and that is indeed exactly what we're going to plan on doing. So we're getting this transfer out to min-miss here, and we'll get this changed around. We're going to need to raise this periapsis, but that's fine. I'm not too concerned about it. And in fact, depending on how this is actually going, I want to focus on min-miss here. Depending on how this is actually going, I would like to take a quick peek at this. I think we're going to leave it here. We'll just call that good. So that seems reasonably fine. Now, I would like to warp to, like, here, right? Or start up something here, but unfortunately that's not the way it works in KSP2. What we need to do instead is we need to find our Minmus encounter. So that's in 24 days, whereas this is in 25 days, and this would be in 13 days? Yeah, there's something very strange here. No doubt about it. I want to warp to this, but that's apparently in 24 days. I think that's the wrong encounter, to be clear. So I'm going to manually warp this forward some. Okay. So off we go. We're manually warping for right now, just because I'm not confident that we're going to actually nail this. Not confident at all. Okay. Pulling back on that warp at this point. And now we can see that there are definitely two separate tracks here. I want to warp to here. Not on the other track. So that'll do. Now we want to enter the SOI of Minmus, which we now are in. Beautiful. So at the periapsis here, I want to do a minimal burn to enter orbit. Why is this going away? I want to create a maneuver plan. There we go. We're going to do a retrograde burn here. Not that retrograde. We're going to do a minimal retrograde burn to enter orbit. Like that. That'll do. So that seems reasonably fine. This is going to put us in a equatorial orbit that's very similar to the ComSat 3 equatorial orbit. We're going to have to raise our periapsis, but that's okay. We'll align to this position. And of course, Minmus is down here as expected. Is Kerbal up here? It is. Okay, cool. So that seems to be quite consistent. No doubt about that. So we're just getting into position here. This will be a pure retrograde burn, and we're going to lose a lot of this speed. We've got plenty of delta V in this to make this happen. So let's warp on forward about an hour. Excellent. We're about 40 seconds away now. 30, 20, 10, and 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, mark. Okay, we're just looking to enter a minimal orbit here. Overshot. Okay, we're going to move this around to prograde. We're going to get rid of this. And we're just going to do this a little bit more. This is very sensitive over Minmus, of course. I just want to put this into basically the same periapsis as the ComSat here, ComSat 3. So that looks good. We're just going to bring this around to prograde and raise this guy right on up. Almost there. Okay, let's thrust limit this. Down to 1% thrust. There we go. Now we can have a lot finer of control. And that looks good. So from here, I'm going to create a maneuver plan. This is going to be a prograde burn, and we're going to just have this guy fit the same sort of orbit here. Now, this could go a little further. Yeah, that's okay. This'll be fine. This will be absolutely okay. It's not perfect, but it'll do. It'll definitely do. So that looks good. We're going to align to that burn position, which is going to be in about 9 days, and it's going to be 1 delta V to get that done. Very, very minor delta V amounts. No doubt about that. So let's just slowly rotate ourselves over, and then we'll warp to this maneuver. Right about now or so. We're not quite in position, but it's good enough. We're still about 25 minutes away, so let's get to a slightly better position here. And then we'll warp to that roughly 30-40 seconds marker that the game likes to put us at. Cool. 40 seconds. Looks good. We'll warp a little bit further. 30, 20, 10, and 4, 3, 2, 1, mark. And out we go. Just a little bit further. That'll do. Okay, So now what I want to do is I want to put in a maneuver plan about right here. We're going to want to bring this up. Now, that's going to need some retrograde tossed into it. No doubt about it, we're going to need a fair amount of retrograde tossed in. Okay, overshooting it slightly. So a little bit of prograde at this point. That puts us in a nice polar orbit, with our periapsis being not quite where we want it to be. Okay. So I want this guy to be about like this. And then we're going to need to bring out our periapsis slightly, which means doing something like that. That looks good. Okay, we'll align to that. That is going to be a 40 meter per second burn. At the current thrust level, that'll be about a 2-minute burn. We can increase our thrust level to maybe like 10%. That doesn't appear to have updated. If we do that, does it update? Okay, yeah, now it's an 11-second burn. That'll be fine. So that'll put us into a decent position there. Let's warp on towards that. We're still 20 minutes out. And now we're 45 seconds out. Looks good. About 10 seconds, and 3, 2, 1, mark. And let's get that orbit shifted right on over. Fantastic. Only 40 meters per second over Minmus at this high altitude to change our orbit over into this. From equatorial to polar. Nutty. That is so little. So we'll call that good. That is not necessarily perfect in terms of the comsats, but it should be relatively fine, all things considered. The timing is not necessarily ideal, but it should be much more easy at this point to be able to have connections wherever we happen to be in the Kerbal system. So that'll be great. It is, of course, time to put a cut in here, so I'm going to go ahead and do that, and next episode, we're going to start working on our moon station, our lunar gateway, if you will. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible, including ALS Gamer, Shadow Wolf, Atala, Ali Lee, Dark Horse, Upper Cumberland Gamers, Nick Smarty, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, Soccerman12UK, Kentogan, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button down below the video, and as always, I will see you all next time.